Hi, I'm Vinay Bayer in conversation with Amit. Hi, Amit.
Hi Vinay, how are you?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Good. A bit nervous because this was going to be our first probably interaction
Yes, indeed.
that we are going to share with people left and right.
So today we are here at Amit's place. We are trying to get into a context of knowing Amit in detail and what he has done with his past and what he wants to bring onto the table. Welcome to our show. This is The Missing Link with Amit Chatterjee. Welcome.
Thank you.
Amit, let's get to know you. Who is Amit?
I think this is a tough question for anyone, Vinay, but yet, well, I'm probably at the third stage of life where I have more behind me than probably in front of me. And life has been kind to me, I would say. Life has taught me a few things that I still love to share, hoping that it probably makes a difference to a few lives. So that's my purpose, essentially, and that's probably why we are together here to find what we can share.
So, what do you do with respect to your work, with respect to your life?
Well, coming to maybe the question, what do I do? I try to keep myself busy, my mind active, because I'm now in mid-60s. I hung up my managerial boots now almost 8 years, a bit premature in other people's views, but I did. I chose to do that because I wanted to spend some more time with my family, with myself, and finding things that can last me longer. Because the normal work that I did, which most of us do, is very much fitting to the context. So I used to be a manager. In simple words, it took me around 40 years of age to actually introduce myself saying that I am a manager. So that's the largest part of my life. I was a manager, and today I share the experiences that I not only gathered, but also in hindsight, made conclusions, because with the benefit of hindsight, you probably learn a little bit more through reflection, and then try to fit into the context. So, I mean, in short, like most people, I started my life in Delhi. I was made in Delhi, Bengali. So I grew up amongst diversity, and I think, again, in hindsight, that was very useful because it was not a problem for me to manage or handle diversity, which probably most of us as managers have to face when we go ahead, right? And particularly in a country like India, because we have this beauty and this fantastic, I call it the vaccine of, diversity that prevents any kind of agglomeration, any kind of boring monotony, for example. So we always have something happening. So that's how I was in the middle of something happening. This was in early 70s when I was a student. And in that time, probably for India, the most important thing that happened was the emergency. And post-emergency, the India was quite different. So I was a young student, a regular of the Indian coffee house where you talk and listen a lot. And after that, I started working. I studied to become a scientist, but that was not to happen because my father was not well. I had to take care. So I became by default a salesman. And I sold different things, not contextual today, and finally ended up as a sales manager in a biotech engineering company where I spent the next 23 years. After maybe 6 or 7 years, I got the chance to become, I was asked to go on the board of one of the acquisitions the company had made. The company was a German company, and they had acquired globally company that was hived out from Philips worldwide, and they had a subsidiary. They needed somebody to turn it around. So I became a turnaround manager in my own eyes, again in hindsight, I would say. So I'm not an engineer, but mostly this last 23 years, and I work largely with engineers because the businesses were grounded in different streams of engineering. In the biotech engineering field, we had almost every kind of science, not only engineering, but even physics and biochemistry, microbiology. So I had people that I could learn from and adapt to, and also manage and lead. Yeah, my life has been, and I think I was lucky enough to always get into situations where I didn't know much. And that probably brought out whatever, not only I did, but even whatever I could learn. So being in situations where you do not know, you're not sure of, I think makes you probably dig deeper, look further, and then discover what needs to be done. You fix your priorities because you're not sure. So it's good to be nervous, I would say.
Sometimes it does. Yes. And with respect to your journey in your professional career and the change, how it impacted you personally and also professionally, a little bit about that.
Well, see, demography in our country, of course, and also when I was relatively younger, when I first became manager, probably I was 30 years old. No, it was even earlier, maybe 27 or 28. So you deal with younger people, for sure. I grew up more as a, reader, and of course I did a lot of sports. So these were my two occupations. Reading helped me a lot because most people who get busy, they probably don't get the time to find the love for reading. So I'm lucky again, thanks to my father, I got the habit of reading. So we should compete in finishing books so that we can get on to the next interesting one. So, but demography was never a challenge for me. I mean, I was more always comfortable with, I would say, wiser people or older people than with people who are much younger to me. I think I went into roles of responsibilities while I was still quite young. So probably this attitude helped because I always could, on one side, for sure, empathize with what was going on, whether it was younger people or older people I was interacting with, but I could also keep a distance. And maybe it was so because I was more focused on what were the objectives, what were the goals, what was the purpose towards which I was leading myself, and through that, influencing others to also help me to get to where I wanted to. Not as a person only, but also for the company or organization or business that I was leading.
So what all organizations and companies that you work for?
Well, initially I started, as I said, as a default sales guy with selling decorative laminates, and then it was a very intense experience because it was one of those typical Indian businesses where not much was done as per rules. So I learned the world which is beyond the rules. And after that, I went into an engineering company where we were selling different kinds of industrial machines that were used for the food and pharmaceutical industry. And my education having been in chemistry and a post-graduation I had in biochemistry helped me there because the application for those industrial products was in the chemistry and biochemistry background. So I understood that. I also obviously had to study a bit of microbiology. And from there, I switched to this company, which was small. It was not even at that time a subsidiary. My boss had started this business for this German company, and later on the German company, bought over his shares. As probably it happens, Germans are quite careful. They don't come and hit the road running straight away. So that is what initially with my boss and my friend, we could build it up to a level where the German principals then finally acquired 100%. And just before that, I had got into the role. They had two subsidiaries, one of which I was heading as the managing director. And in another 3-4 years, I took over the entire group. Um, so, yeah, that's been my kind of journey.
I remember you saying you preferred managing director over a CEO's post which was offered to you. A little bit on that?
No, it was not offered. See, what happened was that in the initial days when I was the managing director of the group of this German company, I found sometimes social contacts in a social context introducing me as the CEO of so and so. The name of the company I can share quite happily and proudly to Sartorius. It's a company from northern part of Germany called Göttingen. And I still have a lot of good friends who are like me, half retired or mostly retired. And so initially, when I was introduced as the CEO of Sartorius in India, I did not get this thought that I should object. But later on, when I had built up the organization over here, including the functional organization, engineering, R&D, supply chain, different parts of the operations, production, quality, etc., HR, IT, and then I connected it to the global functional management, then I realized that I'm not the CEO anymore. I'm the managing director, which was actually my legal title anyway. So that's what I think I once mentioned to you, because you need to understand that as a CEO, you have probably more responsibility to visualize what should happen. And you to then bring people, develop allies, and in a foreign subsidiary, you to develop allies on both sides of the border, right?
It's more of a bird's view perspective rather than a hands-on feel to things.
No, that comes a little bit later in managing I would say, the business on a day-to-day level. Yes, you need a bird's eye perspective, but to build it from scratch. And we were just 18 guys when I started, helping build up this company or business in India, and I left it when it was 550 people. It was probably, doing a couple of crores when I started with my boss, and I left it around 600 crores. So it was a great learning, and you go through so many different phases. I can't simply cut out one small cake and say this is exactly where it started, this where it. So there are overlaps. There are, things you get into because of the priorities. They are of different tastes. It's like Indian cuisine. I mean, you don't choose. You just have to have whatever you get in whichever part of the country you are. I mean, you may like Bengali food or may not like it, but if you are in Kolkata, you are eating Bengali, and if you're in Chennai, you're eating Tamil food, right? So that's how it is. Or in Gujarat, I mean, lovely, big, huge thalis at the traditional Gujarati restaurants. So you don't choose. You make value out of it. You progress. You keep on stepping out.
So when you say priorities, I mean, you being at that stature and being a managing director of a company, and suddenly you decide that I'll hang my shoes and I want to walk out. So how the priorities shift at that designation, because there is competence, there is network, there is a substantial lifestyle which is going hand in hand, and taking that call, and what provokes you to take that call, at the same time still manage the show and handle it?
I said, Vinay, that, I consider myself a very lucky guy. So when I first took the call and I invited a meeting with my board in Germany, it was in 2009. We had just set up the beautiful campus on the Kunigal Road, and the inauguration was due, I think, somewhere around October or so. And in March, I called a meeting, and I said, and my deed contract, MD's a 5-year contract, so deed contract was ending December. I said, let me go, because after this, I don't see too much that I have to do. But the board said that I'm probably underestimating myself, and they said they wanted me to stay. But the point is this, that what makes one feel, unless I can speak for myself, what makes me feel that I should let go is when I realize out of my own reflections that I'm not contributing, or I'm not going to contribute as much as I did in the past. It's a little bit like in the Indian old wisdom, we say we have 4 stages of life, right? The brahmacharya ashram, it's like a sigmoid curve, right? So you start with the brahmacharya ashram when your job is basically to learn, then you get to the grihastha ashram when its job is to do what you have to do for yourself, for your family, for your responsibilities. And of course, you learn simultaneously. And then you come to a phase which is Banaprast,
Yes.
okay, which is the plateau of the sigmoid curve. And finally, you're supposed to go to sannyasa, which probably does not happen in today's life. But Banaprast does happen, both personally as well as organizationally. For me, the realization was clear organizationally. In fact, I was probably doing everything to go into Banaprast. You know, I mean, when I find others who can do something I can do, I always let go. Then only I can get into, what I love to do. And even if I do not know, if I don't create time for myself to discover what I may love to do, I cannot do that. I cannot find the time if I don't let go. So I was doing that, and of course this created, the development. I had to also ensure that people develop. So I had to pick people, I had to identify the right kind of, mindsets, help them, coach them to learn and develop what was required to take over from me. So whether it was sales, whether it was operations, whether it was strategy, whatever it is, even visioning, for example. I mean, not everybody, it doesn't come always naturally to everybody to vision. Okay, it doesn't come everywhere again easily to people, like you said, to have this bird's eye view. I mean, they all come from some way your habits of growth that you have had. People who have at an early stage of life had to take probably more responsibility, which they did not choose. Maybe it just happened to them. Okay, they probably take that more longer term view. I can't generalize statistically. I'm not an academic, but I think probably it does more often than not. So for me, the realization was not sudden. It was something that I was working towards, maybe not knowingly in the earlier days, but quite knowingly when probably I had done already maybe 10 years or 7 years of leading the organization. Because it was clear that, as I develop others to take over different functions and different aspects of management and also leadership in an organization, obviously I go in the background. And if I go in the background, then I have to find something else to do. And as far as the company is concerned, which you work for, it means that you fold up, you hang up your boots. That's what I did. In fact, I finally hung up my boots end of 2016, but I had actually officially called a meeting with my board in 2015 March. And then we took 1.5 years essentially to install the succession plan that I had already created. I was very proud, I'm still very proud of the successes that I helped create, and they're all doing well, okay. And I'm very proud of that.
Amazing. With the roles that you have played in your career after you hung your boots, that the kind of the roles like being a management mentor, being an executive coach or a life coach.
That's what I chose to do after I hung up my boots, because I do it honestly. It's a selfish requirement for me. 40 years you spend in the industry, you learn a lot of things. You don't learn it by inventing things. You learn it by practicing, by discovering, right? And managing the context that you have to do.
Sure.
And having done that, it was obvious that I should, if I simply just completely cut myself off, then it dies with me. But I won't die. My brother is a good doctor, and there are enough good doctors in hospitals and medical science around, so I'm not going to die suddenly. So I had to find ways. So for me, executive coaching came naturally, because even as a manager, forget the title, managing director or not, I realized that what I was really good at was, I was good at spotting potential. I was good at finding people, not because they were better qualified or working for a competitor or not. I never recruited somebody for that. I was always hunting for people who could, as I said, grow and take over responsibilities and deliver, okay? And so I was good at spotting such people. I was good at also then coaching them as a manager. And I think this is something which in the industry is still not that much prevalent. Managers, unfortunately, in today's world are so busy with so many things, and I don't blame anybody for that, including the LCD screens that we have in our lives. Okay, it doesn't really make us smart. The phone may be smart, but we become probably a little bit unsmart because it's difficult to avoid all these things. So coaching, something that came naturally to me, as I mentioned, progressing towards Vanaprastha. So that's why executive coach. And management mentor is, just the other side of the coin for me, because the people I coach, where are they working? They're working in the turf of management and leadership. So obviously, executive coach and management mentor is what I today look at myself as, to add value and to keep learning, to be in touch with the industry that taught me, not specific industry, but the entire industrial world. And our country needs industrialization. All of us know that. So I also have a little bit of, urge in me that, if I can help to make companies, grow better, faster.
On that note, you have worked with German subsidiaries and seen the global context of things as how the global GCC companies work in different dynamics, and the context of Indian people working in that environment, and the mindset of the management here, having the aristocratic leadership or the tier leadership which follows the protocol and the keys.
You mean the hierarchical
one, over the project-based where it is a cross-functional leadership, and you're bringing in diversity over there, and a lot of implementation happens to the project on a different zone just for the project. So on that note, how open is Indian market today? Now, you said executive coach has not opened up here that much as it has opened up in US or many other forefronts. So on that note, how do you feel challenging aspects over the years or after you started off your executive coaching in India here?
Well, see, one of the thoughts from the Indian context and being a proud 100% Indian comes to me is this, that, see, the way our society has evolved till now, which like most societies from the agrarian society and then to, largely services and yes, patches of industrial society. We are doing many things at the same time. It's not like, what happened, for example, in the I won't say just the Western world, particularly Europe. That's where the Industrial Revolution started. And they also started from the agricultural society, And but they were smaller, countries when the sovereign countries came up. And to shift from an agricultural society to from the medieval ages or medieval times to beginning of industrial society, and then getting on to what Peter Drucker said, knowledge society and post-knowledge society. I think they did this over 400 or 500 years. Whereas in India, in my country, we want to do over hardly 30 years. So that has its challenges for sure. But maybe that's for another day when we can get into detail as to how to manage these challenges.
So that means to say the need of the hour today in Indian companies, we have more prominence for the behavioral involvement with the concept of coaching over training.
Well, see, I can't speak for others, Vinay. I can speak from what I believe. Coaching was always important. See, look at even our traditions, or even human society traditions, when there was no writing, etc. It was through coaching. That means people learn through observing, interacting with somebody who has more experience, right? That's how even today a child learns from his or her parents. So coaching is not anything new. I would say rather training is relatively new, because as we, get into so many different silos of knowledges and so much of specialism which has happened due to technology, due to all the learning that we as humans have gone through, or going through, and we keep on going through. Training is what I say is, about the explicit knowledge that you have to have. It's like oxygen. You can't live without it, okay? But you don't live only on oxygen. You also need your chicken tikka or, a nice pizza, Napoli. And so the point is that coaching is where
More of an implicit.
explicit knowledge ends. That's where coaching begins. So, for example, if a manager has to know why somebody she recruited, today she probably has to let go. It is not because that she was not knowing what domain knowledge or skills to assess the candidate for. She did a good job, or he did a good job. But then the behavioral side of it, to understand how this new recruit will work, whether it's a manager, senior manager, or an IC as nowadays you call people, the behavior side of that individual is not something that you discover or you can assess through your competence or your candidate's competence in domain knowledge and skills, right? So that's where coaching comes. Now, if a manager is coaching his or her next level manager, how he learned how to assess those aspects that this person, despite the domain knowledge and skills, may not work or fit the context that we are recruiting somebody in, or may fit very well. Those are other aspects which comes with experience of the manager. So that's where coaching comes in. And as we get into more of complexity, and today you have no dearth of complexity, you know. I mean, forget demographics or, you know, language issues or, you know, international working across borders, you know, different societies. You work with the Germans or the Italians, you know, they're not the same. You work with the Tamils and the Bengalis or Marathis, they're not the same either. Okay, yeah. So as Indians, actually, we have an advantage because we are used to working, provided we have worked. Okay, and most of the Indian managers have worked and do work, and that's why probably, you know, one of the reasons that you see that Indian managers do so well in global roles. Because we are used to complexity, we are used to diversity. But when you do it knowingly, and that happens when you take up a coach, whether you have a coach, you are lucky to have a coach in your manager or somebody inside your own company. It's different from mentoring again. Okay, because mentoring is about a mentor has to be an expert in your domain to mentor you. A coach is kind of agnostic of the industry or the domain. A coach is focused on the individual. Okay, like if you are coaching me, you have to understand me, you have to empathize with me in my context, you know, my motivations, what bothers me, what does not bother me, and the reasons could be entirely different from your coaching another person, say Gautam. So that's how coaching differs from both mentorship and training. And I think as particularly senior managers or middle managers even today have to manage so many contexts and so many situations for which they are not trained.
True.
Their domain knowledge and skills is not the issue over here. Okay, so that is where coaching comes in.
I mean, it's so relevant in today's day and age with respect to the senior executives who are in their transition phase of their personal life. Like they take a sabbatical, they're rejoining, and there is a complete dynamic change with respect to their family environment, their work environment changes after a long gap. They're regaining that confidence, getting back to their old role, which they used to work so well with. At the same time, they are not able to find the new space which they have brought themselves into. I guess that's where the coaching model works.
Exactly. I mean, the senior executives today, irrespective of the age they are in, mostly they would have grown-up children. Okay, mostly they would have spouses also probably equally successful, so-called, in the industry and also busy. Now, when they go back home or when they leave home, what they leave from and what they go into has its own share of pressures, expectations. Expectations is a big thing, I would say, right? And then they walk into their workplaces. I will touch the virtual side maybe in another discussion, but workplaces, they're facing another set of expectations. There are expectations that, depending on the kind of society you are coming from, people may not clearly speak about it, but their eyes would still speak about it.
True.
Now, if I don't have the time to actually look eyeball to eyeball and feel what is the expectation, I won't discover it. True. For example, see my working, I worked largely with the Germans, for example, for now 30 years. I'm sure the German also has expectations, and they will but they will precisely say what they want from you. Or they will precisely say what they don't want from you.
That is something I guess we as Indians are learning in this generation, where we can speak our mind. And it's more so with our kids when we see if they're going through some pain. In our generation, especially when we grew up, we hold back. We don't express. And when somebody says, "Do you want it? Do you don't want it?" If it's our parents, we'll somehow answer them. If it's somebody else, we'll think twice. Should I even answer? We'll hide back behind our mothers, and that's how we grew up. And slowly that transition of an introvert to extrovert happened.
Yeah, and this is somehow ironically labeled as a so-called hierarchical society. Societies in Europe are also hierarchical. I don't want to generalize it, but it is. But yet, see, this has gone through this, as I said earlier, this has gone through a evolution of individualization of life.
True.
Like most people would leave their parents' home at the age of 17 or so. In our country, still it doesn't happen. Even today, it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Okay. So, so once you leave home at 17, you make a lot of choices on your own. So you get used to it. Okay. And this is happening over the last, as I said, 300, 400, and 500 years. And so we are in the middle of all these things in the last 30 years primarily. Before that, we were largely medieval, I would say. Okay. So we don't have the habit of saying no. We are taught, okay, and it's ingrained in us by also watching the behavior of our parents with their parents, or anybody behaving with anybody who is elder, for example. And we bring that habit back to our workplaces. If a manager says, "Can you do it?" and I know that I find it difficult, I can't say no, because it is not my culture. So I say, okay, yeah. And I see that, a lot of foreigners have fun on this, or whether we say no like this, or we say no like that, or whatever, But a no is a no. And for a German to say nein is not rude. They don't mean it mean to be rude. They're just stating the fact. We can say okay, we can mean both a no or a yes. Yeah. Okay, but actually we don't mean it, either no or yes. We have just heard you, we will come back. But we have to get into the habit. So coming to this question, when you said about projects, now working projects is about planning, milestones, resource planning, managing cost, quality, time delivery, all these things, right? And also multiple resources. So there, if you can't say no, you're in trouble.
True.
On the other hand, if you say yes, and you have not really done your resource planning properly, and you're not controlling it, you're in bigger trouble.
Yeah.
So that's where the cultural issue comes. But it's not about hierarchy. Hierarchy is there in most societies, maybe not so much in the US, but definitely in Europe, definitely in Japan, Korea, anywhere. I mean, there are habits with which people grow from, and that is where the habit comes as a behavioral aspect. And we need to understand why somebody says what he or she says. That's empathy.
True. On the note of your dynamics of training and coaching, the difference between them, now that the coaching aspect is more of a implicit knowledge which one has to have, and now that you have the experience and the privilege of working for GCCs and also seeing multiple varied environment in the work culture, with that, what is that one essence that you felt it is predominantly changed over the past generation to this generation with respect to the context of today's workforce having to implement things and the challenges which they're facing, and you coming out of your corporate, you're able to make an impact?
So I would like to limit my response about managers, okay, and not get into what today's generation refers to as the ICs, the individual contributors. It was always there, we now have a label, okay. So as far as managers are concerned, what has changed is this, that they have to manage more of change, okay. And whether they like it, not like it, change just keeps hitting them. I pick up one aspect. Look at the rate of attrition that you have in particularly knowledge organizations. Okay. India is a different society. It's not a different country only, it's a different society. A lot of changes going on socio-economically, and hence you have people who are driven by, let's say, their so-called lower needs. I say that we are all Maslow's prisoners anyway. So not everybody is at the self-actualization. So you get a better deal, a better salary, better position. You want to be in the city where you want to be, and somebody offers you. So there are many motivations which pull people from one side to another side. Now, this was not so in the earlier days. When I was young, that time, you're used to working with the same manager for a longer time. Okay. My first manager, when I worked for the longest stretch, was 10 years. I worked for a biopharmaceutical company producing vaccines. He was my manager for 8 years. And we are still very good friends, and I look at him like an elder brother. Okay, because we translate what we learn. So we find, these relationships. We look at a manager as a brother, elder brother, or elder sister, or some look at as a father. You find these stereotypes in your workplaces, which today has changed.
True.
Because today, younger managers, they're not even spending or able to spend so much time with their parents. Okay, they have gone out of their home bases where they grew up, for example, where they played football or cricket or whatever. And hence, they don't bring those stereotypes so much. They probably are looking at more, YouTube channels or Instagram videos, which is coming from all over the globe, and probably those stereotypes are sitting more. And they are more driven by immediate results that they have to create. And for sure, those immediate results are milestones towards larger goals. True. But when you are driven by those immediate results because you are under pressure to produce those results, etc., your behavior changes. Your view becomes very, very focused. I won't call it narrow, but very focused on the short term.
Short term, yes.
And I was introduced by you to Instagram, and it was quite horrifying for me to think about, speaking for 8 seconds. I can't. This is something I'm more comfortable with.
On a lighter note, with the kind of the knowledge that you're having to share it with the world, the kind of guest lecturing that you have done and shared your knowledge across. I also, read your book, Ascent, the Practicing Manager. So a little more on the book forefront, how did it happen, why the thought of writing a book and what you wanted to convey by doing so?
Yeah, so as you know, the name, what you see, a Practicing Manager's Growth Mantra. This is the name I gave, but my publishers, which was Penguin, they wanted a shorter name. Again, shorter things probably sells or gets communicated faster, if not does the job better. So we made a compromise, so that's why my name is still there below, and the name that my publisher wanted is there, that is Ascent. How it happened, to put it shortly, I used to write. I liked writing. Probably also went with this. I did lecturing, etc. at IIMs and all that. So this is something I did not invent. Again, it comes with the way I grew up, etc. and all that. So one of my colleagues, unfortunately, he's no more. My namesake, he passed away last year suddenly. He was a guy who actually is responsible in a way for my book getting written. He said, "Why don't you, Amit, start a blog?" And I said, "What blog is for young yuppies, And he said, no. So I used to always have this parallel monitor on my desk, and he took my laptop and he said, "It is up in 2 minutes, We just put a blog site, and it's still my blog site on WordPress. And I had articles sitting on my hard disk, so he just said, "Why don't you just post?" Because everything I used to write had to be read by the people who worked with me, or they had to listen my reading it out. And this guy, Amit, he used to read those things, and he knew all my writings. He said, "Just put it over there." So that's how my blog site came. And after some time, when I kept writing my blogs, and each blog was kind of triggered by different experiences that I was going through as a manager, as a leader, whatever you call, as an executive. And because, as I said, managers basically manage different contexts. So I noticed that there was kind of a narrative, on through the different blogs that I had published over maybe 1 year or so. And that basically is what became the book. Of course, thanks to the fantastic editor from the Penguin, a young lady, I really learned a lot from her about how to communicate through your writing. I mean, I was writing for myself, so I don't think I became the best, and I never was in the business of becoming the best. But that's how the book came out. So it's basically a narrative of what I learned, what I picked up, what I concluded, and it's now quite old. I mean, I think it was published now 10 years back, and just the day before, somebody I met said, "I just bought your book." I said, "Oh, is it still available?" I said, "Yeah, I ordered it on Amazon." I said, "Wow, so Penguin still makes money out of my book." That's how it goes, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So, Amit, it was amazing knowing you as a person. In fact, that we have shared quite a lot of space together. And with respect to your professional space, that I get to know you with all the activities that you do in terms of bringing the knowledge part of it, and also getting to the pulse of the moment and trying to connect with your humor, and also with the diverse sense of appeal that you have with your context of words, context of communication that you bring onto the plate is something which is really good.
Thank you, Vinay. I mean, it's not just a pleasure, but I think it's an opportunity. It's again a good fortune that I am able to, thanks to you, also share my views, and it also reflects on how you think. So thank you for being who you are. And yes, we will go on.
Looking forward for more episodes on you communicating on specific part and aspects of knowledge which can be imparted to the audience, who can learn from it and also grow their career and also their personal life.
Sure, Vinay. Just prick me, something will come out. Hopefully it will be interesting for our viewers also.
Thanks, Amit. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vinay.